If you want to improve your rotational power and enhance your ability to rotate, stay tuned as I'm going to take you through a contrast set where I'm going to show you how to improve your rotational power. So a brief overview of today, what we're going to cover. We're going to be covering 3 exercises that are going to be run in a tricep. One exercise is going to feed into the next. We're going to be starting with an overcoming isometric. We're then going to be moving through an exercise to improve hip and spine rotation. And finally then going to finish with an exercise that focuses on moving the hips and spine at higher velocities. If you're a striker, a grappler, or an MMA fighter, you know that rotational power is a key physical quality needed within the sport. And today I really want to share with you these 3 exercises that I use with my clients and athletes on a regular basis to enhance these qualities specifically. As we know, what I try to obviously promote is that rotational power starts from the ground up. We have to push into the ground pushes back. This sets off the transfer of kinetic energy. Now, the purpose of today, we're only focusing on hip and spine rotation. And the first exercise I'm going to walk you through is an overcoming isometric. It's something I've been exploring with in the later stages of my adductor rehab to get me back to rotating at higher velocities. So all you're going to need is a squat rack. We're going to place a bar on a squat rack, and there's a number of ways you can do this. You have some people who like to set up the bar with it being behind one side of the rack and in front of it to create that rotational force. What we're going to be doing today is just setting it up on even pins. I've got, as you can see, if you come really close, you can see that I've got the bar pressed against the squat rack, and I've got the bar obviously pressed against the end of the collar. Now, you may not have access to collars like this. I do, so it's a lot easier for me to set up. Now, if you don't, that may mean that you may need to set up one collar on the inside and one collar on the outside to have the bar from not moving forward and backwards when you do this exercise. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be in a split stance here. I'm essentially going to be pushing and pulling at the same time simultaneously to create a lot of rotational torque through the hips and pelvis. So I'm just going to set up here with my arms across the bar. All I'm going to do is I'm going to ramp into this, and all I'm trying to do is I'm going to pull with this side or with my left arm, the one that's closest to the squat rack, and then push with the other arm against the collar. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to come down. When you're doing this overcoming isometric exercise, you want a maximal contraction of 3 to 5 seconds. Now, you are going to feel a lot of rotational torque through the hips and pelvis, especially through the adductors on the lead leg as I'm turning the other side of my pelvis into the lead stance leg here. Pretty much like as if I was throwing a rear hand punch. It's the same kind of offset stance to bias a bit more hip internal rotation. Exercise number 2 is a cross body kettlebell chop. Now, this is something I really enjoy doing, and it's not a dangerous exercise. You won't take your kneecaps off, and you definitely won't hurt your spine either. If you're someone who's perfectly healthy, it is a safe exercise. Now, I have 2 bulging discs. I have a pretty stiff back. If I can do this, I'm pretty sure you're going to be comfortable doing it as well. Now, the weight I'm using is a 12 kilo kettlebell. I'm going to show you what it looks like first, then we're going to talk about the nuances in between of how to execute it effectively. So this is what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, I'm just swinging that kettlebell across my body, and I'm in a hip hinge position here. So I'm sitting into my hips and I'm swinging that kettlebell across my body in this hip hinge position. What's actually happening is that as I'm swinging the kettlebell this way, my hips are moving in the opposite direction. So I'm swinging and I'm sitting into it and I'm redirecting that energy across my body as I shift into the hip. What you'll notice, this kind of looks like a little bit of a ski march here, where I'm kind of like sitting into the outside of the hip. I've got a fair bit of internal rotation going on through this hip as I'm swinging that kettlebell across my body. Now, the beautiful thing about this is you can build up momentum, and the more momentum you build up, the faster you're going to move that spine and hip through rotation. I would recommend performing anywhere between 8 to 16 reps. I know that's a big rep scheme, but it just depends on where you're currently at with this exercise. I like to do higher reps and build up momentum as a set goes on. Exercise number 3, we're doing a cross-body scoop toss. Now, just want to make this very clear that the weight of the ball that we're using is about 2.25 kilos to be exact. Not sure where I got this ball from, but if you are doing this exercise, I recommend no heavier than 2 to 4 kilos, as we do want to move the hips and spine through high velocity, and we don't want to just end up muscling that ball into the wall. Now, main points of performance here when you're doing this exercise, we're going to start with the arms high. The ball's going to cross the body, so I'm going to chop it across my hip. As you can see, I'm kind of sitting into this back hip where I'm stacked. My center of mass is stacked over this back leg. I'm then transitioning that weight and extending that back hip and externally rotating that hip as well, and then throwing the ball into the wall. As you can see, I've turned this pelvis in towards my right side pelvis to actually generate that energy into the wall. Now, it's coming up top again, across the hip, and then driving into the wall. Up top, down, drive into the wall. So it's going to look like this. This is very similar to the kinematics of a rear hand punch. And the reason is we are transferring weight from the back leg and hip and transferring it towards the front leg. The front leg acts like a braking mechanism, pretty much very similar to what you would see in a rear hand punch. So for example, I'm here, I'm throwing a rear hand punch. I'm obviously doing a very similar movement pattern to what I would be doing here with the crossbody chop and throwing it into the wall. Obviously, we're not trying to mimic the specific demands of the sport, but we are trying to train some of that musculature and move the body at similar velocities to a rear hand punch. Now, the rep scheme that I would use with this, I would perform anywhere between 4 to 6 reps with maximal intent. The goal here is to move dynamically. You want to move as fast as possible with maximal intent, where you are trying to break the wall with the ball. Okay guys, let's just rehash the rep scheme here. So the first exercise we went through was the overcoming isometrics in a split stance. You want to do about a 3 to 5 second all-out contraction, 1 rep per side. The second exercise we went through was the cross-body chop. The rep scheme for the kettlebell cross-body chop is 8 to 16 reps, obviously depending on how heavy the kettlebell is. And the last exercise we went through was a cross-body scoop toss, where we're performing around 4 to 6 reps with maximal intent per side. Just to wrap this up, guys, this is an effective rotational power sequence that you can incorporate into your velocity block before your strength work. It only really takes around 5 to 10 minutes to get through. And if you guys need any help with your physical preparation, or you're dealing with injuries and setbacks, we have one-to-one online coaching where you can work with me directly, or you can sign up to Combat Sports Performance. I'll pop a few links in the description below. See you on the next one.